I'm looking up at Zhengyang Men. It's the front gate to Tiananmen Square, along with, you can see the roof there, we'll get a better view in a minute, of the gate across the street, across Tiananmen Street, which is closed. That's, was it Jianlu? Take a look at it. It's unrestored. Good view of the train station, which is now the Railway Museum. It's been turned into a nice railway museum, and behind it, that building there is the Urban Planning Exhibition Hall. Now, I've finished with the National Museum of China, which reopened in 2011. They combined the Propaganda History Museum with the Art and Artifact Museum. So in the basement, the main exhibit, I think, is their Ancient China exhibit in the basement. And then they have some modern art upstairs and some rotating exhibits. But the main part is in the basement, the Ancient China exhibit, which does a chronological history versus a thematic history. They do have some thematic Buddhist sculpture and Shang Western Zhou bronze galleries upstairs that are more thematic along the lines of what I saw in the Shanghai Museum. But it is nice to see a chronological exhibit of all the Chinese dynasties, starting with the Paleolithic era up through the modern dynastic periods at the National Museum. Now this area, we're looking at the unrestored gate of, is it Qianlu? It's a double gate that was the south entrance. Traditionally the south entrance was the main entrance to Chinese East Asian style imperial cities, which are all modeled after Qian and Shanxi province. Beyond this gate, it would have all been encircled, this park that's here now would have all been encircled in a semicircular wall that would have formed a large defensible area at the south gate, keep a garrison, I suppose. And then it went into what was during the Qing period, especially the ethnic Han enclave, Chinatown of Beijing, since the Manchu and the Qing were not were ethnically Chinese, but the Manchu are from the north. They're not ethnically Chinese per se, and the Han that lived here, the Ming dynasty before the Qing, was ethnically Chinese. So hopefully I'll find out a little bit more about it. I haven't gotten a lot of information on exhibits. The Urban Planning Museum is future oriented. In fact, the model is based on what Beijing will look like in the year 2020. So you don't get a whole lot out of it in terms of the ancient city. They do have a model of the Forbidden City, and they talk a little bit about it, but they don't go into a whole lot of detail, surprisingly. Now, I thought there was an audio guide for the area up here, but I haven't come across that yet. This is the nightmare of Tiananmen Square, and I say nightmare because of the security that you have to go through to get in there. Now that's the exit. I had assumed it was the entrance. I'm not sure if I have to walk around to get into the mausoleum. I mean, from what I understand, there's not much to see inside the Chairman Mao Memorial Hall besides his embalmed body. Maybe a timeline of his life, I suppose. We'll find out. That's my goal, is to go in there today. There's also a weird thing with bags. Some of the guidebooks say you have to leave your bags outside the square. I don't know what's going on. None of them seem too up to date with the current practice. The security line that I came through was out of exit A from Tiananmen on line 2. And you can see the line of people queuing up. It's actually not that long now, and it's moving at a steady pace. It'll probably take you 5 minutes to clear it. When I came through, it was so crowded that they pushed everybody out and down through this underpass. You have to come out over on that side, walk around, come down through the underpass again, and there's a second security checkpoint for people who just want to get into the square. I don't know. I'll find out how I get into Chairman Mao's Hall. Maybe it's around the other side. Or maybe you have to get a ticket outside the square. It's all rather confusing. And the crowds are what is annoying, since if you go out the wrong exit for the subway, you get funneled into security checkpoints, and if you want to go back down in, you have to go through a second. You have to go through the security again just to go out a different exit for the subway. Sometimes, if you choose the wrong exit, you'd have to pay again to get into the metro. So, a little frustrating. My experience with the Forbidden City, or all the East Asian cities like Tokyo that are based on Qian, yeah, it's great if you're the region and you live in the imperial city at the center of the, town. But if it's a modern metropolis you're trying to get around, it makes it rather frustrating, since everything has to go around it. And then your central heart of your city's got all the security headache and everything's going around it anyway. It's an incredibly inefficient way to have a modern city set up. Forward, when I walked out of Tiananmen railway station in the throng in the twilight, the lofty gate tower and thick walls of Zhengyang emerged in my sight. All of a sudden, I seemed to feel the truth of history. At that moment, a robust seed was planted in my bosom. Hu Renji, historical geographer. An exhibition of the history and culture of Zhengyang. Pivotal location for defense of the capital. Anyone attempting to understand Beijing will feel somewhat puzzled and at a loss on how to approach when he first embarks on the journey. We must find an appropriate access to this great city. Those magnificent and awesome gates of Beijing City are perhaps the first page that we should resort to. Tale of Cities, Du Chengji. See, personally, because I was already familiar with the layout of East Asian cities, I avoided this area because I didn't want to deal with the headache and have my opinion of Beijing be spoiled by the security headache. You can see here, that's the Jane Lu, and that's the Qianmen, Zhengyang gate. Zhengyang, or the Gate of Zenith Sun, was constructed at the same period as the Forbidden City and has been an imposing building at Beijing's central axis for near 600 years. It's the most magnificent and lofty among the numerous gates of Beijing in terms of scale and status. It vividly demonstrates the city layout, military defense, ritual systems, and architectural art of China's feudal society in its later phase, and substantially embodies the time-honored history and cultures of Beijing. So again, the railway station, two double gates, Tiananmen Square, Mao's Mausoleum, Martyrs Monument, the flagpole where they do a dawn flag raising ceremony. It's probably when you should get here if you want to avoid the security headache. And then the Imperial and Forbidden City is up here. I don't really understand the difference between the Imperial and the Forbidden City, but what I'm guessing is what they're showing in green here is traditionally the Imperial City, and then the Forbidden City is inside of it. And then this separate area down here was the proletariat. And there were also market areas around here and residential areas around here. But they say there are 9 gates around the Imperial City, so I guess maybe all this is the Imperial City. And then there are 7 gates, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, around the old city. The central business district is out to the east side of the city. Now it's a shame that in some of these pictures in 1915 you can see that most of the city walls were still intact. They only started tearing them out in the 50s and 60s, if you can imagine. So this is what it would have looked like here with your double gate here. So your main entrance to the city was incredibly well fortified. See, some rickshaws are lined up here. Looks like a market next to the train station over here. This is 1915, before rebuilding. Pivotal location for defense of the capital. Zhengyang was first built in Beijing in 1419 after Zhu Di got enthroned in Nanjing as the Ming Emperor Chengju. He decided to move the capital to Beijing based on the Yuan dynasty capital Dadu, great capital. The Ming dynasty saw the southern wall of the inner city of Beijing move southward for about 2 li, where new walls were built, with 3 gates and all retaining their respective names for the Yuan dynasty. The central one of the 3 gates at the southern wall was called Lijiangmen, or Glorious and Orthodox Gate, which was renamed Zhengyang shortly after. New structures started to be constructed 1436, which include the gatehouse tower, archery tower, lock towers, moon fortress, bridge lock, and moat. In 1439, the construction was finished, and the Zhengyang gate compound was fully completed. It's 1915 again. Gatehouse tower, Zhengyang after rebuilding 1915. The structure of Zhengyang. Gates of walled cities functioned for military defense throughout ancient China. They underwent thousands of years of development and improvement and became fully fledged by the Ming and Qing dynasties. Zhengyang complex of this period includes a gatehouse tower, archery tower, lock towers, moon fortress enclosure, temples, etc. It was an integral part of the southern wall of the inner city with moats surrounding, and thus formed a large-scale military defense system which was highly fortified. As the due south gate of the inner city of Ming-Qing period, Beijing, Zhengyang enjoyed a loftier status than the other 8 gates, and thus was of a larger scale. Design drawing for archery tower. Zhengyang by Li, the designer. Inside the Qian fortress. What is that? Urn fortress, the moon fortress. So yeah, that's a good way to look at it. The enclosed area is a fortress between the 2 double gates. West Lock Tower, Zhengyang. East Lock Tower. I think the best area that I saw restored city walls was in Suzhou. They have several areas around their corner walls, and entire lengths of the wall around the city have been restored, and they're very accessible and not crowded, and they don't have security, headaches and all that. You can walk around them. You can watch my videos from Suzhou. Put in Suzhou on wall, it'll probably come up. So here's a good overview of initially what it looks like. You had, let's see, I don't know if that's the Golden Water Lake of the Imperial Palace, or a river that's now been channeled. But I'm guessing most of this would have encompassed Tiananmen Square, would have been maybe a much larger area. Qianlong's complete map of the capital from the Qing dynasty. Qianlong's complete map of the capital. First large-scale complete map of Beijing based on real surveys of its inner and outer cities. Also titled Complete Map of the Capital, kept by the Qing Imperial Household Management. This map was painted by Hai Wang, Giuseppe Castiglione, and Shen Yuan, etc. And completed 15th year of the Qian period. The map was drawn in ink on paper and consists of 17 rows. Each row consists of 3 albums at the left, center, and right, which amount to 51 albums altogether. The whole map measures 14.144 meters in height and 13.504 meters in width, so it's huge. It's like 30, 40 feet, over 40 feet, at 40 feet. Scale 1 to 650. The map was drawn precisely, meticulously, and 3-dimensional shapes of main buildings were demonstrated in skill-like photography. What could clearly be seen include the map of the inner and outer cities. Structure details of the city gates and walls, and distribution of the big and small streets, lanes, and alleys. The plain layout of the main buildings were all based on real surveys such as palaces, gardens, temples, altars, mansions, government offices, drum and bell towers, granaries, venue for the imperial examinations, etc. In addition, residences, courtyards, houses also reflected. Qianlong's complete map of the capital is the most authoritative and vivid material on the appearance of Beijing during the Qing dynasty. This miracle of map history is now kept at the First Historical Archive. And they're showing you here on the floor. Looks deteriorated and water stained. Unfortunately. You can see here, maybe they're showing the chainman area on the ceiling too. So I'm not sure where I was supposed to get my audio guide. I asked at both places that I came in. Information maybe here. Hello. Audio guide? Okay. 100 deposit. Beijing courtyard houses. Si He Yuan. 120. Ah. There you go. English? Yep. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So that's number 1 there. I will I'll go through and listen and then make another video.